Good morning, one and all. This is Dr. Diana. Welcome to session 31 on modern software engineering. We have been learning about agile development methods under modern software engineering. How do we develop a more efficient and less time consuming, better performing software in a shorter span of time. So we have seen that when we contrast it with the traditional software engineering approaches, the modern software engineering or the agile principle is not a protocol or a process, but a perspective or a change in the mindset. So once we start thinking differently and adopt certain basic changes in the thinking process, we are able to deliver better efficient software in a shorter span of time. This has been proved by a team of software engineering people, and it has been adopted worldwide, and companies like Google are all they are using agile principles in their software development approach. And we have completed our revision of almost all the units. Unit 2, which is having some of the important concepts, is what we will run through in today's session. We will revise on 3 of the very important concepts of Unit 2. Unit 2 actually deals with collaboration between the team members in an agile development environment. Now, when we talk about collaboration, the first and foremost aspect in collaborating well is the trust aspect. Now, I should be able to trust my partner or my team members. Only then I'll be able to collaborate well. Otherwise, every decision that I take or every interaction that I make becomes critique in nature. To avoid that, we need to build trust among the team members. And we have seen some of the methodologies for building trust. And also we have seen that sitting together and developing together increases the trust and collaboration between the team members. Now, in this session, we will particularly look into how to involve the customer really into your process. Or in other words, collaboration also means that you have to collaborate not only among your team members but also with your stakeholders. So we will be looking into how real customer involvement happens in the development space. And then as we collaborate and integrate our different pieces of code that we have been developing parallelly into one big lump that should be delivered to the customer, we need to follow certain coding standards so that not only the teams collaborate well, but the code that is developed by these teams also collaborate well. And the last thing we will look into is the types of reporting we can use for establishing well and good collaboration. The first one is called the real customer involvement. Now, in agile development, when we try and contrast it with the traditional approach, we see we are providing a release once in every couple of weeks. So every 2 weeks, we are going to release something to the client. And when we do so, we are going to accommodate a plan, design, develop, test and deploy phase in every iteration. When we do this planning phase in every iteration, it requires that a client is available with you all the time. So the agile development encourages one domain expert or one client who would use the software to be available at the development site continuously throughout the development. So when that person is available, the domain knowledge is transferred to the development team, and this is what becomes your software eventually. And the main goal of customer involvement is to understand the goals and frustrations of our customers and end users. In most of the cases in the traditional approach, we see the client as only the one who delays the payment, nothing else. So we do not empathize with the customer or involve them into our development space. When that happens, the perspective of the customer becomes very oblique for the programmer to understand. So we never try to understand what the customer actually thinks and feels. Because of that missing component, we see there is a lot of non-functional aspects that the software that we develop is unable to meet. So what do we do? To overcome that, in an XP team, on-site customers are responsible for choosing and prioritizing the features. So it is not always a functional aspect that the customer is mindful of. They also put into their non-functional requirements, and when they belong to us in the development space, it is more easier for us to collaborate and involve with them in identifying those features. And when we have some on-site customers who are guiding us through the development and who help us or who defines the requirements on behalf of the client, the value of the project that we build is actually in their hands. Now, this is a very big responsibility as an on-site customer. They should be able to choose which features are required in the software that we develop, and those features are to be of utmost importance to the client. So these on-site customers play a very important role in the development. Once we identify that the on-site customer is important, there are various degrees to which we can involve the client into our space. Based on the level or degree of involvement of the client or the customer, this software can be divided into various categories. The first form is called as personal development. A software can be categorized under personal development when the development team is its own customer. Or in other words, I am developing a software or a macros for the team themselves to use so that they can make their work a bit easier. Such kind of software are called personal development software. Here, the on-site customer is the team itself. So they are developing the software for their own use. As a result, there is no need to involve an external customer into my own development team. The team itself is their own customer. And when that is the case, it is very easy to understand the requirements of the customer and to develop the software. The software thus developed will at most extent it will comply with the requirements of the team, because I know what my requirements are and I am building what is required for me. Because it is for my own sake, I put my best efforts into it. So the software is also very efficient, and when you validate the software back to the requirements, it suits or matches perfectly to the requirement. This is called as personal development. Now, the second form of customer involvement and software development is called as in-house custom development, in which it occurs when your organization as a whole, it asks your particular team to build something for the entire organization's use. Imagine you have the best example for personal development is this CSE web portal. Now, for the department to use, the department itself has designed the software. Now, if you go in for the college portal, it can be categorized under in-house development, where for the entire organization, CSE department becomes responsible for creating a portal. It may include writing software to streamline your operations, automation of the company's factories, or producing reports for accounting, or some other web or social media linkage. All of these come under this aspect. So one particular team of the organization is given the responsibility of developing a software for the entire organization. In-house custom development occurs when the organization asks my team to build for the entire organization's use, and an in-house custom development makes it easy to involve the real customers because they are easily accessible. Now imagine the portal is to be used by the entire spec community. So I need to take inputs from students, from the management, from principal, from other departments, from every aspect of the college. But it is easier to involve that customer because they are already available inside the organization. The best approach is to bring your customers into the team to turn your real customers into on-site customers. So if I am working on some reporting for the account section, I can involve one person from the account section into the development team so that they become my on-site customers, and the guiding process is even more efficient. The third form of development is called as outsourced custom development, where it's very similar to the in-house development, but you don't have any connections that an in-house team does. So what happens is, another organization gives your team some product to build. This is the usual case. As a result, you may not be able to recruit real customers to act as team's on-site customer. In that case, you will have to find your own on-site customer. The next is called as the vertical market software. This is quite different from the customer development. It's not customized for the organization. It's more like a general purpose software that can be altered a little bit to fit for your particular organization. So it's a software that is developed for many organizations, and it is built for a particular industry, and it is often customized for each customer. Say for example, the attendance portal or an attendance software for an engineering college. Most of the engineering colleges adopt the same software, but it can be adjusted a little bit to match your organization's specific need. So a little bit of customization is possible, but be careful about giving the real customers too much control over the vertical market software, which means I cannot allow the customer to add on so much of customization to the product. So that's called as a vertical market software. And the huge amount of software that is developed goes into the horizontal market software, where this is the visible tip of software development iceberg, and it's the software that is intended to be used across a wide range of industries. As a horizontal market developer, you may never have any ties with your actual customers. They may never meet. You can think about Tally for an example. All organizations use Tally, but Tally never gets into communication with any of the customers. They understand government policies and rules, and then they come up with the software, and they do not provide any customization for any particular organization. So this is called as the horizontal market software. So depending on the level or degree to which we involve the customers into our development, softwares are categorized into personal development, in-house custom development, outsourced custom development, vertical market software, and horizontal market software. And these are the levels to which a customer is involved. Now once I involve the customer and then I start developing, when I develop, I need to collaborate between my team members. Just like how I establish trust between the team members and make the team members collaborate effectively, I also need to find some methods to integrate effectively all the different patches of codes that all the team members are developing. So integration of code is equal to collaboration of team members. So when I try to integrate code, I need to follow some coding standard that can help in smooth integration of all the bits and pieces of code. These coding standards are more like guidelines that are established by the team themselves, and the team, they agree to follow upon the same coding standards so that integration becomes easier. Now this is a joint aesthetic effort. We have our own way of producing code, and we refine our style over the years until we think it's most readable and most compact or the most informative it can be. The goal is to create a collective work that is greater than any individual could create. Creating a coding standard or a guideline to which all developers agree to adhere when programming allows smooth integration when you combine all bits and pieces of code. Now, how do I create such a coding standard? Creating a coding standard is an exercise in the building, or it's more like a voting system where you take the consensus from all the participants or the team members, and then you fix up on a standard and you start following that standard. So the first thing you do is create a minimal set of standards that everybody can live with, and focus on consistency and consensus over perfection, which means you make sure that everybody adheres to it. That's called as consensus, the number of people adhering to the standard. And consistency means you follow the same principles every time you integrate. So that is called as the consistency. So you concentrate on these two aspects rather than the exhaustiveness of the standard that you set. How do I set or create a coding standard? There are certain basic aspects for which I need to put up the guidelines. Some of them you can directly go about choosing an industry standard for that particular language that you are using for development, or you can define your own guidelines. When you define guidelines, these are some of the areas for which we need to particularly define the coding standards and guidelines. The first one would be development practices. How do I develop? How do I name my functions and all that? Then the tools, key bindings and IDEs that I use. How do I bundle up with my machine libraries? How do I define my accessory files and all that? Then I have to follow a file and a directory layout, some naming conventions that I would use, some document structure or the directory structure that I would use every time I save something or create a file. Then build conventions. Build conventions are usually automated by the repository and the version control server that you use. And then you also have some error handling mechanisms which every programmer is supposed to follow. Then you also include approaches to events and logging, and follow some basic design conventions or typesetting and formatting for the software. For all these aspects, we need to define some guidelines. How do I define these guidelines, or how do I create the coding standard? You initially call everybody for a gathering and a meeting, and then each member in the team can come up with their own standard definition for the particular aspect, and if everybody agrees, that becomes the coding standard. Now hold these initial meetings as often as they are useful. After that, change the standard at any time. Just stand up, announce your intention to the team, and if everybody agrees, put that on the flip chart. So you maintain a flip chart where you define all your standards. Retrospectives are another good time to discuss changes to the coding standard. Now when I announce a particular standard, say for example I use a naming convention like this, that's what I stand up and pronounce into the meeting. If everybody, the consensus is using a thumb voting. If everybody puts their thumb up, it's a for voting or an agree voting. If they put their thumb down, it means to disagree. If they put their thumb sideways, it can be counted as a neutral. So based on the number of votes, you can come to a conclusion and immediately put that onto the flip chart. That becomes my coding standard now. And once I create the coding standard, it is important that everybody in the team adheres to the or follows the coding standard properly. When we try to follow the coding standard, pair programming is very, very important. It helps us maintain some discipline in the maintaining the standard. And no matter what standards you choose, someone will probably be unhappy with the guideline. So you don't push everybody hard. Over the time, it will get settled by itself. Coding standards are in many ways an aesthetic choice. It doesn't matter what the standard is, as long as it is consistent and thoughtful. So once you start maintaining your own coding standards, and once everybody adheres to the coding standard, it becomes very, very easy during code integration or collaboration of your code. Now once I have come up with the code, and then I have collaborated, I am able to integrate my code effectively, I also need to communicate other aspects with the rest of my team members. That can be thought of as reporting. Reporting inspires trust in the team's decision. Everybody sits together, and an informative workspace clearly tracks your progress. All the information you need are at your fingertips. So in an agile environment, everybody is having all the information they need for development. You don't actually need the information. It's only the stakeholders who need the information. So we build some progress reports, and there are few types of reports that can be circulated among the team and along with the stakeholders. The first one is the progress report, which reports the progress of the team, and it can be an iteration demo or a release plan. Although progress reports seem to exist so that the stakeholders can monitor and correct the team's direction, it is not their purpose. Instead, a good progress report allows stakeholders to trust the team's decision. Other forms of progress reports can be a vision statement, a weekly demo, a release and an iteration plan, a roadmap, a status email. All these can form other types of reports. A burn-up chart is an excellent way to get a bird's eye view of the project. It shows progress and predicts a completion date for your team's work. And the teams produce burn-up charts whenever they update their release plan. And you can also go for other forms of reporting called management reports, where you report the productivity of the team, the throughput or the number of features the team is developing in a particular amount of time can be reported. And defect also forms a very important parameter in tracking the time towards completion. All these can be reported. The main aspect which is reported in the management report is the time usage, the account of time of every developer who is working part of the team. It can be divided into the unaccounted or the non-project work time, where every team member contributes in administration or the company-wide meetings, etc. And it includes out of office, the vacation and the sick leave of the team member. It includes the time the developer spends for improving their skills, such as training, research time, etc. And then also for planning, each of the team members may take some time that has to be added in. And the most important aspect, or the developing time, the team member uses. So charts like these can be created for various team members, where it shows how much of unaccounted, how much of out of office, how much of improving skills, and how much of time people spend on planning and developing. This gives an overview for the management reports. It helps the stakeholders to trust the decision of the customer. So with this, I'll be stopping for today's session. These are the three main important topics in Unit 2. So with this, we are actually completing our syllabus for modern software engineering. All the best for your exams. Thank you one and all. This is Dr. Diana signing off. Thank you.